So now we're going to talk about developing a disaster recovery plan. It doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to be able to make a disaster not happen. It would be nice if we could, but that's not going to happen. But what we can do is we can put a plan in place so that we can minimize the effects that a disaster has. And by doing that, we're being proactive instead of reactive. The first part of developing a disaster recovery plan is to create a disaster response team. When you're creating a disaster response team, look within your church. You know, who do you have in there? Do you have somebody that's a director of music? If you have a preschool within your church, do you have someone that oversees all of the teachers and the everyday happenings for the kids that you have there? Your pastor? Do you have a facilities person that takes care of the church, anything that's going on with the church? What about somebody that takes care of your IT, your sound equipment, your projectors, your phone system? Do you have someone like that? Those are people that you're looking for to put on your team. And then look at your outside sources. You know, go and invite a police officer or someone from the fire department to come sit in with you and be a part of your disaster response team. They're a great resource for helping you figure out certain areas of your disaster response plan that they can give you information of, okay, if you're going to evacuate, where should you go? Where should your meeting point be? And what's your best escape routes? They can also help you put together an evacuation route if you don't already have one. So look at your outside sources. What about people in the congregation? Do you have somebody in your church that is a nurse, doctor, plumber, electrician? Have them be on your response team. Anyway, you're going to develop a team, and then once you get your disaster response team put together, you're going to take a look at your team and you're going to determine, okay, out of these 10 people that's on my response team, who is going to be the person in charge, the main point of contact? That needs to be somebody that knows the building, knows the business, is familiar with the people. Once you have that person picked out, pick out another one. Because when a disaster happens, if that first person is not there, either because they're on vacation or because their home is also affected in the disaster, you need to make sure you have somebody that you can fall back on. Always have a plan B. Once you have your team together and your leader in place, you want to identify your potential disasters for your area. Take a look around where your building's at. What are you close by? Are you close by a river, so you have to worry about flooding? Are you by railroad tracks? And if you're by railroad tracks, do you know what those trains are transporting every day? Are they transporting chemicals? You can find out, and you should find out. If one of those trains was to have an accident and a car turns over and it had chemicals in it and it releases toxins in the air, you need to know that. What about if you need to do a shelter in place? You need to be prepared for that. Is your church located somewhere where there's an open field by it? In the summertime, look at wildfires. California is not the only place that has them. We can have them down here. So take a look around your facility and identify the potential disasters that you have. And that's how you want to develop your plan, is you look at your disasters that you could have there, you look at your facility, and then you start drafting your plan. And when you're drafting your plan, there's certain things that you want to, there's certain things that you can ask yourself. For instance, who within the church knows where all the water shutoffs, the electrical shutoffs, the sprinkler shutoffs, where are they? And how many people know where they're at? Is it one person? Because if it's one person and they're not there, who else knows? What about an evacuation route? Does everyone know where the evacuation route is posted and where they're supposed to go? If you're in the middle of a church service and something happens and you have to evacuate the building, do you have a meeting place for everyone to go outside of the building so that you can account for everyone? And then once you account for them, especially if you're a church that runs a preschool in it, and you have to evacuate the building, and you get all of those teachers and all of those kids out, and you've accounted for everyone, now what are you going to do with them? You've got all of these people standing there, and you've accounted for them. What do you do with them now? Where are they going? What's the plan? Who's going to be in charge of getting those kids to their parents? Who's going to be in charge if you're still needing to keep business going, to take a laptop home and continue doing business from their house? It's something you need to think about. Where are your blueprints stored? I've had a blast going on these loss prevention tours with Sue because I get tickled at listening to people when we ask questions that really, they're so simple, and yet no one ever thinks of them. And trust me, until I got into the emergency restoration business, I never thought of these things either. But one of the most important questions out there, and something you should know, where are the blueprints for the building? Most people have no idea where they're at. And then when they find them, they're in a cardboard box underneath the sink in the bathroom, right by a good old pipe that if it breaks, those blueprints are goners. Where are the access keys for the church? If something was to happen, where are those access keys? And how do you get to them? If somebody needs them because the secretary's not there and she can't get into her office, or her office was just affected by a fire, is that your only place where you have access keys? Or do you have a list of people that they have keys so you know you have someone else you can fall back on? Do you have people within the building that are handicapped? And if so, who helps them get out of the building? If something happens in the way of a fire or a tornado, or maybe an unhappy person walks into the church and they want to take their frustrations out, and you just happen to be the closest place for them to go, you know the media is going to be there. Who's going to be responsible for talking to the media? And what are they going to say? Because the media is always targeting those people that they know are going to really open up their mouth and talk. And you've got to be very careful with what you say and how you say it. So who's going to be the person that's going to be the spokesperson? What are they going to say? And does everyone else know what they're supposed to do if they're approached by the media? That's something really important to think about. Those are things that you want to think about while you're developing your plan. And if anybody ever wants to talk with me more about developing a plan and the certain areas, my information is on the PowerPoint presentation that I gave you there at the table, as well as the black packets underneath. Feel free to call me at any time.
Can you tell us, if we had you come and help with everything, can you tell us what you say to media and that type of thing?
I can help you with that. I can help you, but really that's something you've got to do. I can give you suggestions, but you'd need to work with your pastor.
I think that's covered by the conference. We've already set that in place.
There you go.
That immediately goes to the conference, and no one in our local church speaks to the media.
Very
Comes
good.
out into people.
And does everybody know that?
That's not correct.
Well, not physically Topeka, but out of my office, I'm the area director of communications, and I'm based in Wichita. And I either work, my job is to coach whoever the spokesperson is going to be. Maybe someone at the local church, depending on what the situation is. It might be the district superintendent. It might be somebody from the conference office. It depends on the situation who would be the person who would speak to the media, but we would have one person.
But it's true, you need to contact district superintendent or the area communications
That
office.
gets decided then who the spokesperson
Right.
is.
And
In the
it's
meantime,
based-
we all keep quiet.
And based on
Exactly.
what kind of incident it is. Who
Right.
might best be able to speak to the media. But don't just speak to the media and then call.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And does everybody within your church know that? Does everybody know? Don't talk to the media? Because I guarantee you there's a lot of businesses out there that they don't know that.
I was going to say we're a real small rural church, like 12 to 15 miles from any town around us.
Mm-hmm.
And I know our people wouldn't have any idea, how to handle something like that.
Yes.
School, I work for schools. They've had to, because of the trauma within schools in the last few years with terrorism, have had to do this very thing. So there may be somebody in our neighborhoods and in our communities that has some of that background, just like you mentioned, police and fire.
Exactly.
Maybe a school official that has been trained how to speak to the media. I'm not trained, but I know who to contact who is trained within the district. And the most important thing, if the media shows up, the most important thing is you know who to tell them to go talk to.
Exactly right.
So the plan is the most important part. What is the plan? Does everybody know the plan?
Yeah. Another good person to contact to get suggestions on that is your city administrator. I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, they have been well groomed in how to handle the media, what to say, what not to say. So those are things to think about. Once you draft the plan, you need to communicate that plan. Communicate it to the congregation. If you have a preschool, communicate it to the teachers. Communicate it to the parents. Let everyone that is going to be using that building know what the plan is. No, you don't have to go into deep detail about every single solitary part of the plan. But there are parts of the plan you do want to make sure they know. You want to make sure they know where the evacuation routes are posted and how to use them. You want them to know where the checkpoint's going to be if they evacuate. You want to know what your plan of action is going to be if you have disabled people within the building. And implement the plan. And when I say implement the plan, I'm basically meaning putting the plan in place, making sure your team members are all on board and they all have a clear picture of what it is they're responsible should anything happen. And then once you do that, test the plan. It doesn't take that long to do it. What we do, we test the plan in the afternoon, and then we'll go and we'll order a pizza and some sodas, and everybody sits around a big round table, and we talk about, okay, what worked? What didn't work? What ran smoothly during our test, and what didn't run so smoothly? We need to go back and reevaluate how we want to handle that. Because until you actually put that plan to a test, you're not going to know how well it's going to work for you. Which makes us fall into the category of, I don't have time. Not on the calendar. I got places to be, people to see, things to do. Can't do it. But when that disaster happens, you have no choice. You have to take the time then. So you need to ask yourself, is it really going to really be that disruptive this week if I take 2 or 3 hours out of one afternoon or one morning, once, maybe twice a year, just to practice my disaster response plan? And then once you test the plan, update it. If there's areas that doesn't work, change it around. Because let me tell you something, no matter how great of a disaster plan that you put together, and I mean, you can put together some really good detailed plans, when that tornado hits or that flood happens or it's not going to happen exactly how you had it happening on your paper. It's going to do its own thing, and trust me, Mother Nature, she's got her own mind of what she wants to do. So that's why you need to test it, you need to update it, and you also need to remember, be flexible. Because the disaster is not going to be like what you have on the paper. You need to be flexible. It's not going to be black and white. It's going to be gray. You got to be able to work with it and figure out what you need to do. Okay. These are questions to ask yourself. If you do have a disaster happen and you've got the plan, you've got your disaster response plan put together, and you know what you're doing with your people, you know what you're doing with your contents, or somewhat what you're going to do. And I'm talking about your contents of your day-to-day business activities so that you can continue functioning. Then you've got your structure, okay? It's just been hit. It's damaged. If the power's cut off, how are you going to provide the electricity to begin the emergency mitigation services? Who do you call to secure your structure? Who's going to come in and tarp off your roof and board up your windows and make sure that no other elements are getting inside that building? Because the first 3 days after a disaster hits your building are the most critical for elements to get in there and start doing damage, and you want to prevent that from happening. Who will negotiate with the insurance company on your behalf? Who's going to work with your insurance company on your emergency mitigation services to make sure that they are getting done and done in a timely manner? Will there be any contractors available to begin repairs immediately? This goes back to what I was talking about earlier. You know, I've been in areas where it wasn't just one building that was affected. It wasn't just a community that was affected. It was many cities that was affected. When you have a disaster that hits a big area, all those contractors, all those service providers that you normally use, that they attend your church and they're good friends, they're your neighbor next door, all of a sudden they're overwhelmed with business because everybody's suffering from the disaster. So who's going to be the contractor to begin the repairs for your building if they're all busy? How long will it take for a contractor to respond to your needs? If they're all busy, it could be when you call and you say, hey, my building's flooded. We've got water up to our ankles right now, and it's still coming in. How's it going to feel when the guys, you're on your 5th contractor, and they're saying, okay, well, we're about 3 days out, but we think we're going to be able to get to you Thursday morning about 8 o'clock, 8:30. It happens. It happens. They get busy. They get busy, and they have to schedule them out. It's not because they don't care about taking care of your business, but when you get a lot of people that's been affected, they become busy, and it becomes a first come, first serve. How long will the repairs take? If you have a preschool that you run within your church, how long can that really be not running? How long can you go without being able to continue having that running within that church? So how long are the repairs going to take? Well, imagine having a plan in place that would virtually eliminate every one of those questions that I just asked you and any other uncertainties that you might have should a disaster take place.